Labour's hit out at the government demanding they help low-income families by removing the 5% VAT rate on energy bills. As the cost of living crisis looks likely to escalate, many families will be worse off facing tax hikes, rising food and energy bills. And that, of course, Isabel, is before the national insurance rise in April. That's due to come in April. Well, let's speak to the Shadow Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, Jonathan Ashworth. Very good morning to you. I tell you, Jonathan, first of all, somebody can't afford to put money in the meter wherever you are anyway, because you're in complete darkness. I hope we can at least hear you.
OK, then. So can you see me?
Sort of. Just about. Yeah.
Just about.
Listen, I was going to start by talking about Angela Rayner yesterday in PMQs. She really went for the government, didn't she, on this cost of living crisis that everyone's predicting for this year, the year of the squeeze, as it's being dubbed. How surprised are you then to see the front of the Telegraph this morning, a cabinet minister now speaking out, suggesting that national insurance is cut, or the idea to increase it in April is shelved to try and tackle the problem?
Well, there's no good cabinet ministers like Jacob Rees-Mogg conveniently briefing newspapers saying they're opposed to this punishing tax rise that's coming for working people. We actually need Boris Johnson's government to not go ahead with that tax rise. Look, we're facing a devastating cost of living crisis. Working people, families, pensioners are going to be really hit by the heating bills going through the roof, the taxes going up, the prices in the shops going up, wages are stagnating, the universal credit is being cut. People are really struggling to make ends meet. And Boris Johnson saying, fears about inflation were unfounded a few weeks ago, or claiming that people are getting £140 a week when that's £140 a year for help with bills, just reveals the extent to which he's totally out of touch with the struggles of hard-working people.
Do you know, Jonathan, I think I can't imagine why anyone would disagree with what you're saying there, and I think this is going to hit everybody. It doesn't matter what you earn, but a disproportionate pressure on the shoulders of low-income families as well. But I've got to say this to you. Nobody ever talks about this, but the furlough has to be paid for. The pandemic has to be paid for. They are literally wetting their pants in government, aren't they? They don't want to be in a situation where they're cutting and they're giving back and they're giving out more and more money. We were talking about hospital parking charges today, which obviously the right thing to do would be to temper those in some way. And I know health has been your brief in the past. But the furlough scheme has to be paid for. How would you pay for it? And obviously you can't pay for it by doing what you want to do at the moment.
Well, you've got to make fair decisions on taxation. That's the difference between our approach and the Tory approach. They're putting up tax on working people with the national insurance rise, which is coming later this year, at a time when working people are really struggling, at a time when wages are going to stagnate, at a time when prices are going up in the shops. And yet, over many years under the Conservatives, the wealthier have had bigger tax cuts, whereas the poorer and the working man and woman have had bigger tax rises disproportionately. So you've got to make different decisions on taxation. Why don't we go after these big, the Amazons, all these big internet companies who've made a fortune? They've made an absolute fortune, particularly through the pandemic, because more and more people have, for understandable reasons, done online shopping. Yet they don't pay fair taxes. So there are things you can do. You can do things in a different way to get that money in, and then you can pay out things in a fairer way, like you can fund your NHS properly, you can fund your schools properly, and you can give people support. And one of the things we're calling for is to cut the VAT on the gas and the heating bills, because when we know people are going to be paying so much more, we think getting rid of the VAT on the gas and the heating bills will help people in this year of the squeeze.
Well, look, one thing's for sure, if Labour was in power at the moment, a lot more support would be needed, because it's quite clear if you were in office, we would have had restrictions over the Christmas period. You didn't think Plan B was good enough. And yet here we are hearing widespread praise of the Prime Minister for holding his nerve from people like Theresa May, his predecessor, even Jeremy Hunt, who competed with him for the top job. People who wouldn't necessarily speak out in his defence, saying it's actually quite difficult sometimes to hold your nerve and do nothing. The truth is that's the opposite of what you'd have done.
Well, I don't think that's true, actually, because Keir Starmer, our leader, was very clear over Christmas that we were not calling for a lockdown circuit break. Look, yes, we did say we needed to continue with the mask wearing, that people should work from home, and we only got those measures through, or Boris Johnson only got those measures through, because Labour MPs supported him, because of course Tory MPs are deserting him left, right and centre. But we never called for further restrictions. We said we needed to make this set of restrictions work. And Keir Starmer did an interview over Christmas where he said, look, Labour's not calling for a circuit break lockdown.
Yeah, hospital admissions rising, infection rates rising. So, you know, you could well feel justified for your stance on that. But let me say this to you. What you're calling for now, and this is, you know, the tax burden on low-income families up by nearly a fifth before these national insurance rises take hold. Surely the Johnson government have got to be sitting and saying, people react when it hits the pound in their pocket. That's when it shows at the polls. That's when they will react. And he's got to be worried about this situation. I mean, out of nothing else but being practical, surely they've got to listen to what you and the opposition parties are saying.
But he could get rid of that VAT on the gas and heating bills now. Yet he's dragging his feet. I mean, don't forget, it was only a few weeks ago that he was saying that the worries about inflation are unfounded, even though it's going to hit, 5-6%. The prices in the shops are going up. Yesterday in the House of Commons, he said people are getting £140 a week. They're not. That's £140 across the whole year. He's completely out of touch with the struggles of working people, families and pensioners. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't keep making the argument to him that you've got to do something to help people, because people are struggling to make ends meet. People are skinned, and people are going to be really clobbered, going to be really hammered with these big Tory tax rises that are coming. That's not fair.
Jonathan, whilst we've got you, Jonathan Ashworth, we've asked people who are watching and listening to us to get in touch with any possible questions for you. Amy's tweeted in, and she wants to ask your views on the levelling up agenda that Boris Johnson's very much touted as his flagship policy. She wants to know, what is Labour doing to increase work opportunities for the former, now disillusioned, Labour constituencies in the north?
Well, you've got to provide people with decent jobs. That means you've got to provide people with decent transport links, because, I mean, I represent the city of Leicester now, but I grew up in the north. I know that the lack of transport links can be a huge barrier to people getting into work. But also I know there's a lot of, and it does tend to be mums, although it doesn't necessarily should be mums, but it does tend to be mums who can't get into work because of the huge childcare costs. You've got to provide people with decent childcare. But I also know that employers, and I talk to firms all the time in my role as Shadow Work and Pension Secretary, think that the job schemes that are in place, the Kickstart scheme it's called, just simply isn't working, because they're not providing them with the young people with the skills and abilities that they need. So we need a job scheme that actually gives people the skills that businesses and firms need and want to fill the vacancies that they're struggling with.
Jonathan Ashworth is the Shadow Secretary for Work and Pensions. Thank you very much indeed for your time and your views.